Hi, everyone. This is Jamie Vaughn with Singing News, and I am here with the legend himself, Bill Gaither. And he is here today to talk to us about his new podcast called More Than Music that you can get everywhere in streaming services. And I have listened to them, and I'm telling you, these are great podcasts. Thank you, Bill, so much for coming and talking to us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you for the kind comments. Make sure you tell Gloria about that legend business, okay?
Okay, I
She
will.
won't buy
I will.
them.
Are the two of you in Alexandria right now?
We are in Alexandria, Indiana, and we are being very good citizens. We are doing what our governor and our health officials tell us to do. And when this is done, I hope everybody will say Bill and Gloria got an A+ in citizenship.
Okay, good. So for you, 84 years old, and you in this business, in the music business, you have done everything. You've written, you've produced, you've toured, you have started the DVD video craze that has gone across the country that so many artists have tried to emulate. And now you're in the podcast world. How did all of this come about for you?
Everything I have done, I think I backed into it. It wasn't. Somebody said the other day, "What are your goals?" I guess my goal is to make this day to be as great as it can be, and it seems like the good things just happen. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess and the podcast would be a good example. I had several friends who said, "I don't know of anybody who is better on keeping in touch with your friends as I do." I I call people if I haven't heard from somebody for a couple 3 weeks. I'll say, "Hey, what's going on? What have you read recently? How are your kids?" It's just, I guess, it's my nature. And so they said, "That's called a podcast these days. Can we listen in to what you normally do during the day?" I
Mhm.
said, "Sure, come on." And so that's basically what we're doing.
Yeah. So tell our viewers about the eclectic sort of people that are on this podcast.
And your adjective was right, eclectic. Uh, Anybody who knows Gloria and me know that our circle of friends go all the way. I mean, my taste in music is all the way. I mean, I love Southern gospel. I love country. But if you get in my car, you'll probably hear a lot of classical. I'm very eclectic in my music taste. And I think that is probably true in my friends, which really make for a pretty interesting podcast so far. The people who have heard it says these people are all across the place, including a 94 or 95-year-old retired missionary from Japan who is one of the brightest human beings in our circle, reads everything loose, is excited about every day, and I don't care how difficult times are. She's one of those ladies. Her name is Ann Smith,
Okay.
who helps people like us keep life in perspective. I never forget my dad one time when I was going through a tough crisis, and I was worried about it day and night. Maybe something like the pandemic that we're going through now, worried about it day and night. And he said this. He says, "Bill, it probably is not as bad as you think it is." Then he paused a little bit and said, "And it probably wasn't as good as you thought it was."
Yeah.
We need people in our lives who help us keep our lives in perspective. So a person like Ann Smith is a wonderful example.
And
Then I
what
got
do
a friend like,
Go ahead. I'm
and then
sorry.
I got a friend like Paul Westfall, an NBA All-Star, great, that was just inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame. And when I get with him, it's all about sports and life and perspective too. But having that variety of friends makes for a very interesting life.
Well, it does. I think that's really important too because it helps shape your worldview if it's not just coming from one perspective. And I try to do that in my own life as well. What do you hope that the listeners are going to take away from these episodes?
Uh, I hope that they would also get interested in reading and in hanging around people who don't necessarily always agree with where you're coming from
Mhm.
politically, where you're coming from interest perspective, and I would even say where you're coming from theologically. It's fun to be around people who stretch you theologically. Uh, Gloria and I were watching TV on purpose on Easter Sunday, and it was interesting all the different views of Jesus. He had a great day, by the way, Easter Sunday.
Right.
I mean, there were people talking about him from all different kinds of perspectives. Were those who were talking about from a very personal perspective, he saved and healed him.
Mhm.
There were those who were talking about him from a very social outreach perspective, about how he cared about the poor and cared about the downtrodden. They were coming from all different kinds of theological perspectives. So I would hope that people would say, if you want to live a real interesting life and live it for 84 years
Mhm.
and be mentally, spiritually, physically healthy, you might want to listen to this old man. He might have some ideas that can help you. I know Ann Smith, who was 10 years older than I, still has a wonderful wisdom for me.
I love that. I hope that if I make it to that age, that I will be that kind of person. I really do. Okay, so you love a good lyric. And I know that your new single with the Gaither Vocal Band, This Is the Place, has a really important message for you to share, especially in this day and age. And what would that be?
I think we're finding out during this pandemic that we don't miss the water until the well is dry.
Mhm.
And I think we have found out during this time of isolation, we really took the church for granted.
Mhm.
It was a beautiful, beautiful place. It was a place to gather in the lobby. Some churches you can have a cup of coffee
Right?
and 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 you get to hug people and be close to people, touch people. That's gone now.
Mhm.
This is also the place where we take communion together. We become part of the broad historical part of the body of Christ. We can't do that as a group now. This this is a place where we can kneel at an altar and pray. And in my church growing up, it was also a place when you knelt at the altar, there were other people around you who'd say, put their arms around you and say, can I pray with you, Bill? And there are times when you can't pray for yourselves.
Mhm.
And I think this is the place, the song emphasized that. This is the place where we pray. This is the place where we cry. This is the place where we start till death do us part, where we say goodbye. Here we leave all of our pain. We find forgiveness and grace. Here we walk down the aisle, dedicate every child. Can you think of all the important things that happen in a church, especially around the altar? Dedicating a baby, promising your loved one you're going to be true and stay till death do us part. And also at the same time saying goodbye to some of the most precious people in our lives.
Yeah.
And we wanted to say in that song, this is a very important place. And if this pandemic has done anything, I think there are going to be people when they have a chance to go back again, they're going to say, thank God we can be together. You can sing solos, but it's a lot more beautiful when you've got an alto putting a harmony line and a tenor finding a part and a bass finding a part. I think that when that happens, it makes God smile.
I like that. Yeah. So
So yes, that song is important.
for me, my favorite song that you and Gloria have ever written is Because He Lives. And I would love, and I've heard the story of why you wrote it. And I would love
Yeah.
for you to share with the viewers, especially in this day and age that we're living in these crazy times, the message behind it and the message that I think still resonates today.
No, we wrote it at at the end of the fifth, or at the end of the 60s, and probably the beginning of the 70s, maybe wrote 1970, somewhere along there. It was a time when the world was pretty unstable, and our country was going through all the anti-Vietnam business and racial hatred, cities on fire. And I was in Nashville one night after Martin Luther King assassination, and Nashville was just one of many cities that was totally on lockdown. Gloria and I were in the Sheraton Hotel and looked down on the streets in Nashville. Nobody was out, probably like today with the pandemic. So it was a pretty critical time. I was going through some personal things at that time, and depressed, to be honest with you. And the question was, who in the world would want to bring it? And Gloria was pregnant for our last baby. Who in the world would want to bring a baby in at a time of crisis like this? Mm-hmm. And if you know much about history, you look back and say, the world is always seemingly going through one crisis after the next. In our lifetime, we've gone through the Kennedy crisis, through the Cuban Missiles crisis. We thought that was going to be the end of the world. And then when President Kennedy got assassinated, and then his brother, and then Martin Luther King, and then the Watergate business, and then the 9/11. Boy, I can remember after 9/11, and people were saying, this must be it. This must be it. So if you're waiting to bring a baby in to the world when it's stable, it's never been stable, including the time Jesus was born.
Right.
During the Roman Empire. We bring a baby into the world and we think about starting a family because of the resurrection. Mm-hmm. Because God has been through it. He went through death. He was resurrected 3 days later, and he lives. And because he lives, it could make a difference. Faith is the opposite of fear. And fear is always there, nipping away, trying to do. But the only answer to it is faith and trust, and that'll get us through. And this Easter, we got little reports from all over, including Brazil. They had a day of prayer and fasting, and there were people on their knees out in the streets, and they were singing "Because He Lives" in Portuguese. That was pretty moving to us.
Do you know how many languages "Because He Lives" has been translated into?
I don't know. We went to Brazil, and when we started singing all of our songs, but when we got to "Because He Lives," we couldn't hear ourselves sing because they were singing louder than we were. The same thing happened in Norway. When we went to Norway and in Sweden. Then we go to Germany, and it's in German. Then we go to Hungary, it's in Hungarian, So it's been translated in a lot of different languages.
Mm-hmm. What is the favorite lyric that you've ever written?
Well, in all fairness, my wife has written most of our lyrics. So can I brag about my favorite lyric that she has written?
Absolutely.
I think "I Am Loved." I said, if you knew, you wouldn't want me. My scars are hidden by this face I wear. Ah, but he said, my child, my scars go deeper. It was love for you that put them there. I am loved. I am loved. I can risk loving you for the one who knows me best, loves me most. I am loved. You are loved. Won't you please take my hand? We are free to love each other, for we are loved. Let me quote the second verse, because our dear friend Gary McSpadden, who sang in the trio when we first introduced this hundreds of years ago, would always sing this second verse. Forgiven. I repeat it. I'm forgiven. Clean before the Lord I freely stand. Forgiven, I can dare forgive my brother. Forgiven, I reach out to take your hand. I am loved. I am loved. I can risk loving you. May not be our best known song, but it's probably one of my favorite lyrics that she has written.
She is a powerful, powerful lyricist.
Yes, yes.
Is there a message of hope that you would want to give our listeners right now?
You know, we have a new single coming out for the in the Southern Gospel field, and it's a song. It's a song that my son wrote with a couple of his friends in Nashville, and the lyric is this, and I love it. And so my advice for people, and I think it's a bit of hope that you can hang your hat on, would be this. The lyric goes, I'm going to love like I'm leaving, give more than I'm receiving. I'm going to laugh until it takes my breath away. I'm going to say what needs saying, pray what needs praying. I'm going to love like I'm leaving here today.
I love that.
I think we ought to do that, pandemic or no pandemic. That's the way we should live every day of our life. Because you know what, Jamie, I know you're half my age, but none of us have any guarantee of tomorrow. So we need to live this day as if we're leaving. And that's the reason I love the song.
Well, we are very excited to talk to you today, and also for your new endeavor with the podcast, More Than Music. And make sure all of our viewers that you download it, you subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts from. And Bill, thank you so much for taking time today and talking to us. It was a great honor for me to be able to talk to you today.
Jamie, you've been a delight to visit with.
Okay, thank you so much. And we'll talk soon. Have a good day.